I'm Kristin Hazzard. I'm from White Rock, BC, and I'm a physical education teacher, and I also used to teach social studies. To me, it's pride in our country. I've traveled a lot. I've actually lived here and in Montreal because I went to McGill for university, and so I've seen lots of different parts of the country, and I take pride in being Canadian because of, our freedom, first and foremost, the fact that we can, practice religion, have freedom of speech, like that's huge, and especially living in a community where there's lots of multiculturalism, and with my students that I teach, the number one thing I ask is, why did your parents choose Canada to immigrate to? And that's the first and most important thing that they all say is the freedom. I kick ass at hockey. I think in Canada, especially compared to our neighbors from the south, I just noticed when I've traveled across the world, when they see that I am Canadian, they're like, oh my gosh, you're so friendly. And it's kind of like that whole peacekeeping, mantra that we have. And I really think that countries respect us, and we kind of hold ourselves to a higher standard, and just with our values, they are slightly different from some of the other westernized countries. Because I'm a hockey player, and we are known as the hockey nation of the world, I think we are held to a higher standard. I just think back to the Olympics in Vancouver 2 years ago, and there's a lot of my former teammates and former competitors that were competing for Team Canada, and I remember we won. It was an amazing series, and I just remember especially there's a picture of one of my former teammates, and she was doing a victory lap, everyone had champagne and celebrating, same as what the guys do. And there's a picture of her holding a beer and a cigar in her hand, and that was just slammed in the media because, again, people were like, oh, this is so un-Canadian, this is, not professional. So I felt that, she was being held to a higher standard, and, it was too bad because, that was her celebration. That's what normal people do, she just won a gold medal for our country. And I don't know, I was a little disappointed with that, but I definitely feel that there is a higher standard. It just makes me who I am. I don't know, it's kind of hard to put into words, but I really do take pride in being Canadian. There's lots of obviously great things here. Our country is huge, it's vast, there's lots of things to do, different people, lots of places to see, and we have a lot of great opportunities here as opposed to some of the other countries. There's other great countries too, obviously, but there's so many different unique opportunities that we have here as Canadians. Go to just different places, 1 minute you're in the mountains with all these beautiful trees, and then the next you're driving in a bus that's flat through all these grain fields, and honestly, just seeing that until you actually experience it and see it, you don't really realize how vast our country is and how different it is. So many countries, especially in Europe, are so small that everything is standardized and the same, right? But here, you have mountains, oceans, oil fields, flatlands, badlands, and it's kind of cool to experience that. Yeah, well, it's unique because teaching Socialist 10, there is a unit on Canadian identity, and especially teaching a high, ESL population or else a high immigrant population, the answers are just insane sometimes. It's mind-boggling to me, but then I have to realize that, these people are not necessarily born in our country, or else, it's not kind of at the forefront of their mind. They're teenagers too, but, yeah, when I do Canadian identity, I just start, what is Canadian identity? And I just get, we're the friendlier northern people from North America. We're friendly Americans. We don't have guns. We like hockey. We drink beer. Beavers, and so I'm okay, what are some Canadian stereotypes? And so then they get into kind of silly things, and they're I'm trying to think. Yeah, the beaver thing comes up. I just remember it's a struggle, to kind of get what our identity is from these students, and especially students that have immigrated here. So the thing that I did find interesting, though, is, the question, why did your parents immigrate here? And that's kind of cool because they're just oh, hands down, best country in the world to live. Clean water, freedoms, multicultural society as opposed to, kind of melting pot in the States, more accepting of values, more accepting of religion. So those are kind of a lot of the cool answers I get, but then again, it's like, okay, who's our prime minister? Like, oh, President Bush or President Obama. And it's like, at our school we actually do have a Canadian Identity Club, and it's through the Social Studies Department, and I know they're trying to do a trip to Ottawa and kind of just do like a cultural exchange type thing. But at the same time, like, I mean, that trip has been kind of put on hold for the last few years because, like, there isn't a lot of interest, to be honest, enough to make it work. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, there's so many things that we have to teach in schools and, learn in schools, and it's literally just one unit, but I think it should be more cross-curricular for sure.